You're a waitress. What could you possibly know about my math?
Enough to know your model just buried 8 hospitals. Freeze the entire investment.
The first thing Nia Carter noticed was not Everett Sloan's voice. It was the number hiding at the bottom of the screen. Marlowe House made every guest feel important. White linen, crystal glasses, and 36 people who could redirect billions before dessert. Everett stood beneath a projection labeled CivicShield. Capital with confidence. His charcoal suit fit perfectly. His smile belonged to a man who expected agreement before he finished speaking. 16 months, he said. 10 specialists. 90% predictive accuracy. Applause moved through the room. Nia crossed behind the nearest table with a glass pitcher. She had been told to stay quiet, stay useful, and stay out of the camera's sightline. Great Lakes Public Trust was considering CivicShield to guide nearly $4 billion in retirement funds. Among the observers sat Professor Mara Feld of Northwestern Lakes Institute, invited by the trust to evaluate CivicShield's methodology. Their money sat inside the model. Their names did not. Nia filled Hannah Kim's glass and looked. One hospital group showed a projected default risk almost 10 points higher than its operating record supported. She followed the row across the screen. Approved reimbursement, payment delay, collection status. CivicShield had counted insurance payments arriving late as payments that would never arrive. A delay had become a failure. The mistake looked small in the table. Its effect was not. Hospitals serving lower-income neighborhoods would appear unstable, raising their borrowing costs and forcing them to preserve cash that could otherwise support staff, equipment, and facility repairs. Nia checked the footnote, then the source label. Same classification, same distortion. Everett moved to the next slide. Numbers do not care about politics, emotion, or personal history, he said. Elaine Porter smiled. 5 minutes earlier, Julian Park had corrected a mislabeled axis. Everett had thanked him. That is why I hire analysts with sharp eyes. Nia waited until he stopped speaking. Mr. Sloan, she said. The microphones carried her voice farther than she intended. Everett turned. He did not look at the screen. He looked at her black apron, then at Owen Barrett near the service doors. Why is the server interrupting my presentation? A few people laughed. Elaine's smile remained half a second too long. A man beside Nia placed his empty glass on her tray without looking at her. Nia kept her eyes on Everett. The model is counting delayed reimbursement as default. Those are different outcomes. Everett leaned against the podium. Julian, can you translate the server's math for the room? Julian looked at the data. His eyes paused on the same row. Nia saw recognition, followed by fear. He checked Everett's face before speaking. Everett had not asked him to verify the model. He had asked him to restore the room's order. He does not need to translate it, Nia said. The data is already in English. The laughter stopped. Hannah set down her pen. Peter Caldwell, CivicShield's modeling director, lifted his head. Everett's smile stayed, but the ease left it. You seem confident. He reached for a dry erase marker. Confident enough to prove it? Phones rose. Everett walked toward Nia and held out the marker. Prove this is more than one isolated mistake tonight, and Sloan Meridian will place $3 million into an independent education fund. A murmur passed through the room. Fail, and we stop wasting everyone's time. He expected hesitation. Nia saw it in his relaxed shoulders. He believed the apron had already answered for her. She set down the pitcher and took the marker. The plastic felt warm from his hand. She did not turn toward the board. She looked at the laptop controlling the presentation. Lock the file first, she said. Everett's expression changed by less than an inch, but Peter noticed. So did Julian. Create a read-only copy. Preserve the version history. No edits after the clock starts. Renee Brooks, the attorney overseeing the presentation, closed the folder in front of her. Everett glanced toward CivicShield for the first time since Nia had spoken. That will not be necessary. Nia held the marker at her side. Then the challenge is not real. A test only means something if the question cannot change after I answer it. No one laughed. Nia had not written a single number. Still, everyone understood she had seen more than a bad calculation. She had seen the person most likely to change it. Nia Carter's alarm sounded at 5:30 a.m. Bronzeville was still dark beyond the kitchen window. A bus sighed at the corner, then moved on. Nia sat at the small table in an old gray sweatshirt. Her laptop took almost 2 minutes to start. Beside it lay 3 library books and a $2 spiral notebook so full she had begun writing between old lines. She opened to the last page and checked the formula left unfinished after midnight. Missing values, unequal reporting windows, neighborhood bias. The notes looked cramped, but the logic was clean. 9 years earlier, she had been halfway through her second year in applied statistics at Lakeshore Community College. She liked the order of numbers, the way a careful question could expose a careless conclusion. Then her mother's illness stretched through months of appointments, bills, and waiting rooms. When her mother died, Nia withdrew from school and took every shift she could find. She planned to return after 1 semester. 1 semester became a year. The year became 8. Zoe no longer needed saving. She had a steady job as a respiratory technician and kept sending Nia links to re-entry programs. Apply. Call them. You are ready. Nia promised to look later. Exams did not frighten her. Tuition did. So did forms asking why her education had stopped, as though grief and money could fit inside a blank line. She feared an admissions officer would see the gap before seeing anything she had learned since. So she studied without permission. Probability before work. Python after midnight. Open courses on weekends. She downloaded public datasets, rebuilt textbook examples, and taught herself to question every clean-looking result. On Saturdays, she volunteered at Southline Housing Network, where staff tracked rent payments, vacancies, and assistance claims in spreadsheets no one trusted. Nia built a model separating late paperwork from late payment. It found dozens of tenants marked delinquent even though their assistance had been approved. The correction kept several accounts from moving into collections. When the final report went to donors, Nia's name was missing. The funders will have more confidence if Dr. Wallace presents the analysis, the program director said. Dr. Wallace had reviewed her work for 20 minutes. His name appeared on the cover. Hers appeared nowhere. Marlowe House followed the same quiet rules. New white employees were introduced by name. Nia was often called the server, even by guests she had assisted for years. When Tyler, a new banquet captain, caught a billing error, Owen praised his attention to detail. When Nia caught the same error, Owen wrote that she could be too direct under pressure. Guests handed her coats while she carried trays. One man asked where she had learned the word regression, then smiled as if he had praised her. Nia stopped expecting fairness to announce itself. She kept copies instead. Emails, schedules, performance notes. Small incidents disappeared when left to memory. Paper made them stay. Before the evening shift, Owen stopped her near the service elevator. Tonight, stay invisible. These clients do not pay to be corrected. Nia looked at the guest list. Sloan Meridian Capital. Weeks earlier, she had seen a CivicShield technical brief in a public municipal database. A chart about reimbursement delays contained a footnote that did not match its conclusion. Owen tapped his clipboard. "Did you hear me?" Nia met his eyes. "I heard you." In the employee lounge, she opened her notebook once more. On the final page sat a rough model showing how missing data could punish neighborhoods receiving less investment. Its structure looked uncomfortably close to CivicShield. Nia closed the cover, slid the notebook into her bag, and walked upstairs. Marlowe House glowed under white ceiling lights that made every glass shine. Tablecloths stretched across the ballroom. At the front, a screen displayed one line in blue: CivicShield, capital with confidence. Everett Sloan entered through the center doors and the room shifted toward him. Owen greeted him by name and title. 2 trustees stood to shake his hand. Elaine Porter thanked him for coming. Nia approached with water. Everett did not look at her. He tapped 2 fingers against his glass and continued speaking to Peter Caldwell. Nia filled it, stepped back, and watched how quickly respect found the people expected to receive it. By the time Nia stepped toward the screen, Julian had already been praised for correcting a label. Everett had already mocked her for using the word variance, and the room had already laughed. She had checked the reimbursement field 3 times before speaking. While serving the room, she had also seen how zip code, property value, reimbursement speed, and historic public investment pushed predominantly black neighborhoods toward red even without a field labeled race. Now, with Everett's marker in her hand, she faced the control laptop instead of the board. Lock the file. Make a backup. Preserve the version history. Everett's smile thinned. That is unnecessary. Renee Brooks closed her folder. She had remained silent through laughter. Now she spoke. That is a reasonable condition. Everett glanced toward the live stream camera. Investors were watching. Refusing would look worse than agreeing. He gave Peter a short nod. Peter created a read-only copy, saved the original, and opened the version log. A timestamp appeared. The clock had not started. Nia had not written a number. Everett stood at the center of the room, but his path backward had narrowed to recorded evidence. Nia did not begin with the equation Everett expected. She walked to the whiteboard, drew 4 straight lines, and wrote 4 headings in block letters. Approved payment, expected date, administrative delay, true loss. The marker squeaked once in the quiet room. CivicShield combines the last 2 columns, she said. That is the reimbursement error I raised. Everett folded his arms. That is an interpretation. Nia turned toward him. No, it is a classification. She pulled one hospital record onto the screen. The facility had treated the same number of patients as a hospital in a wealthier district. Both had received the full amount they were owed. One payment arrived on time. The other arrived 6 weeks late because the insurer requested additional documentation. CivicShield marked the second hospital as less stable. Same care volume, Nia said. Same final payment, different processing time. Your model punishes the hospital for a delay it did not create. Everett glanced toward Peter, waiting for him to interrupt. Peter looked at the screen and said nothing. Nia selected a second record, then a third. The pattern held. Hospitals serving lower-income neighborhoods had longer reimbursement delays, and CivicShield treated those delays as evidence of failed collection. The model did not merely describe financial pressure, it increased it. Hannah Kim opened her laptop. She requested an independent sample from the secure file and ran the correction herself. Her fingers moved without hurry. That calm unsettled Everett more than Nia's voice had. The room watched Hannah's screen as the risk scores recalculated. 8 hospitals dropped from an average projected risk of 28% to 18%. 6 of them served neighborhoods with large black populations. Hannah read the results twice before standing. Mrs. Carter is correct. This changes the allocation decision. Everett did not look at her. He turned to Julian. Check her work. Hannah had spent decades evaluating public funds. She had confirmed the result from an independent sample. Everett still wanted a younger man from his own firm to validate what 2 women had shown him. Julian noticed it. His face tightened as he copied Nia's correction into the model. The numbers changed again. The correction is valid, he said. The microphones caught his quiet voice. No one laughed. No one looked away. The laughter did not stop all at once. It faded table by table. A man who had smiled at Everett lowered his phone. Elaine Porter removed her glasses and looked at the hospital map again. The red districts no longer seemed like clean signals. They looked like places being charged for the slowness of systems around them. How much would this affect? Elaine asked. Peter cleared his throat. The lower rating could raise borrowing costs and trigger stricter reserve covenants. Those hospitals might have to preserve tens of millions in cash instead of spending it on equipment, staffing, and repairs. Nia capped the marker. Everett's expression had changed. The amusement was gone, replaced by the rigid patience of a man trying to survive a room he had expected to control. Do you have a degree, Miss Carter? He asked. Nia knew the turn before he completed it. When the arithmetic failed him, he reached for her resume. I did not finish college. Everett nodded as though she had confessed. Then this is a lucky observation, not expertise. A guest near the back raised his phone and began recording. Another closed the investment packet in front of him. Nia did not defend her intelligence. She did not list the books she had studied or the nights she had worked through code alone. You asked whether the model is right, she said. It is not. Elaine looked at Everett, waiting for an answer he could not give. He could admit the error, thank Nia, and end the humiliation he had created. Instead, He walked to the control table and opened the full CivicShield dashboard. 12 modules appeared across the screen. "One mistake proves nothing," he said. "Let us see how far your luck goes." Nia watched the files load. Everett had opened the system in front of her. But truth was no longer his goal. He was searching for the first place she would fail. Everett waited until every face had turned toward the 12 CivicShield modules on the screen. He stepped beside the control table with the calm of a man setting terms he expected no one to challenge. 50 minutes, he said. Find 3 material errors that change the investment outcome. If you succeed, Sloan Meridian will transfer $3 million into an independent education fund. A few guests shifted in their seats. Everett let the silence build before adding the cost. If you fail, you will apologize on camera for disrupting this presentation. Then you will leave Marlowe House without a reference. Owen Barrett stood near the service doors, one hand tightening around his clipboard. Nia looked at Everett, then at the live stream camera. He had wrapped punishment in the language of fairness. The money made him look generous. The apology would make her small. "I will correct the record if my work is wrong," she said. "I will not perform humiliation for your audience." Everett gave a short laugh. "You interrupted an investment event. Accountability works both ways." "Accountability requires evidence," Nia replied. "Humiliation requires an audience." Renee Brooks opened the legal pad. "Ms. Carter's distinction is valid," she said. "The agreement can require a public correction if her findings are false. It should not require a personal apology unrelated to the analysis." Everett turned toward Renee, annoyed that resistance had come from someone whose title he could not dismiss. "This is unnecessary theater." Renee looked at the cameras. "You made it public." Nia placed the marker on the table and stated her conditions. The original data set would stay locked. Any new version would display the editor's name and timestamp. Hannah Kim and Renee would determine whether an error was material. Everett would not judge his own model. Peter Caldwell stared at the version log. Julian kept his eyes on the keyboard. Everett called the safeguards dramatic, but the investors watching online had already heard them. Refusing now would look like fear. "Fine," he said. Owen appeared at Nia's side before Renee could finalize the language. "A word." He guided her through the service door and into the hallway behind the ballroom. The sound changed there. No microphones, no applause. Only the hum of refrigeration units and the clatter of dishes from the kitchen. Owen lowered his voice. "Do you understand what you are doing?" "Yes." Everett Sloan books 6 events a year through firms connected to this place. He can take Marlowe House off every premium list in Chicago. Nia watched the pulse move in his jaw. He was not worried about whether the model was wrong. He was calculating contracts and lost commissions. "Walk back in there," he said, "and you may never work another premium event in this city." Nia let the warning settle. She thought about rent, tuition she could not afford, and the schedule that kept her life from slipping sideways. Then she asked, "If I prove the model is wrong, will you protect my job?" Owen looked past her toward the kitchen doors. No answer came. A banquet employee hurried by carrying folded linens. "Owen, do you need the server back on the floor?" he asked. He used Owen's name. He did not use hers. Owen did not correct him. Nia looked through the window in the ballroom door. Everett was smiling again, speaking to Elaine and 2 trustees. The marker waited on the table where she had left it. He believed the hallway had done what the ballroom could not. He believed wages would finish the argument. Nia opened the door and walked back inside. Conversation stopped as she crossed the room. She picked up the marker. Renee read the final terms aloud. Everett signed on behalf of Sloan Meridian, and the firm's general counsel, watching by video, confirmed that he had authority to bind the company. Peter sealed the original file as read-only. Julian displayed the version history on a second monitor, and Hannah moved closer to verify the results. Renee pressed the timer. The numbers began to fall. Nia could lose her job even if she proved every claim. Everett's signature had turned his $3 million promise into an obligation the company could no longer dismiss as theater. The timer showed 41:12 when Nia found the first flaw. CivicShield had tested itself on data it had already used during development. She separated the untouched records, rebuilt the validation set, and ran the model again. The celebrated 90% accuracy fell to 76. A murmur moved across the room. Nia pointed to the two results. The system has already seen part of the exam. Everett gave a thin smile. An academic technicality. He turned to Julian. Does this change anything that matters? Julian stared at the screen. His fingers hovered above the keyboard. Yes, he said at last. It means the published accuracy is overstated. Everett's jaw tightened. Nia moved on. The second flaw appeared in the missing fields. CivicShield entered 0 whenever a hospital failed to report a value. Older reporting systems left more blanks, especially in facilities already short on money. The model read unknown as none. No listed reserve became no reserve. No staffing update became no staff. No recovery estimate became no chance of recovery. Missing information is not proof of failure, Nia said. Everett stepped closer. Have you ever managed a multi-billion-dollar fund? Nia did not look away from the data. I am checking your inputs. I am not applying for your job. A few guests shifted. Owen stood near the service doors, one finger tapping his watch. Then he pointed toward the hallway. Stop now, his face said. Nia kept working. Elaine Porter reached for the tray beside her and placed an empty glass on it by habit. Her hand paused. Nia was no longer carrying water. She was standing at the center of the presentation while the room listened. Elaine slowly took the glass back. The camera caught the gesture. So did Nia, though she gave no sign. The timer dropped below 20 minutes. Nia opened the neighborhood comparison. Everett had repeated all evening that CivicShield could not discriminate because it contained no field labeled race. Nia placed two hospitals side by side. Their treatment quality matched. Their collection rates matched. Their operating margin sat within the same range. One served a wealthy district and received a favorable rating. The other served a predominantly black neighborhood and had been pushed down 2 grades. Zip code, property value, reimbursement speed, and historic public investment had done the work a race column did not need to do. Your team never tested the outcomes by neighborhood, Nia said. Everett's face hardened. You are putting politics into mathematics. Nia turned from the screen. I did not put history into the model. Your data carried it in. The room went still. Elaine looked toward Peter. Did your team test the outcomes by neighborhood? Peter adjusted his glasses. We reviewed geographic stability. That was not my question. He looked down. Hannah opened her notes. All 3 errors can change the allocation decision. The accuracy claim is inflated. Missing data is being misclassified. The geographic variables create unequal outcomes that were never properly tested. Julian had moved from silence to confirmation. Elaine had moved from laughter to questions. Several investors were no longer watching Nia. They were watching the folders containing their money. Everett checked the timer. 09:34. He walked to Peter and bent close enough that the cameras could not catch his words. Peter's shoulders stiffened. Nia saw his hand move toward the control laptop. The screen flickered. Once. Twice. When the image returned, 2 data tables had changed places, and the parameter labels no longer matched the notes on Nia's board. The screen returned with 2 parameter tables reversed. Nia's marker stopped against the board. Symbols she had copied minutes earlier now carried different labels, and the revenue assumptions no longer matched the notes beside her hand. Everett watched her from the podium. Problem? I thought you understood the model. Nia looked past him to the lower corner of the display. The version code had changed. Peter, show the current build number. Peter Caldwell kept one hand near the laptop. The technical team adjusted the presentation layout. Nothing material changed. Then the locked copy should match. Renee Brooks was already moving. She opened the read-only file saved before the timer began and placed it beside the live screen. The tables did not match. One growth parameter had been added. A reserve constant had been moved. The timestamp on the live version appeared later than the agreement. Julian leaned toward his terminal and opened the internal history. His face drained as the log loaded. There was an upload, he said. Everett turned sharply. A routine patch. Renee looked at the timestamp. It was uploaded after the challenge began. Everett spread his hands toward the guests. A stress patch. If Miss Carter understands the system, she should be able to adapt. Nia studied the altered assumptions. One source of revenue had been fixed at a constant value, while another's instruction required the same source to increase with a changing rate. Both conditions could not hold. Any valid calculation would collapse before producing an answer. This version was built to fail, not to test me. Peter looked at Everett. Something in his expression asked permission to tell the truth. Everett gave him none. "Let her finish," he said. "The clock is running." Renee glanced at the timer. So 6:48. The upload violated the agreement. Everett ignored her. If she is as capable as everyone suddenly believes, 6 minutes should be enough. Julian stood. His chair scraped across the floor, louder than it should have. The upload happened after the agreement. I have the version log. His voice no longer shook. Everett stared at him. "Sit down." Julian remained standing. "The account belongs to Peter's team. The change was not part of the original model." The room shifted again. People who had watched Nia as entertainment now watched Everett as evidence. The timer kept falling. 05:59. Nia returned to the locked file. She removed the added condition, restored the original reserve constant, and rebuilt the final calculation from the last verified step. Her marker moved fast but never wild. Every line had a purpose. Hannah followed the work on her laptop. Julian checked the formulas against the untouched version. Everett said nothing. For the first time that evening, silence did not serve him. 01:12. Nia corrected the last dependency. 41. She entered the revised assumptions. 20. The final result appeared. CivicShield's capital recommendation changed across all 3 disputed categories. Nia set down the marker. Hannah reviewed the findings, then looked at Renee. All 3 are material. Each one changes allocation. Renee closed the version log. The post-agreement update also violated the terms. A representative from Great Lakes Public Trust stood near the center table. "The investment vote is postponed pending an independent review." Elaine Porter rose halfway from her chair, one hand beginning to clap. Everett spoke before the sound could form. She had access to the model. The room froze. Nia turned slowly. Everett pointed toward her as though accusation could repair arithmetic. "Southline Housing Network reviewed municipal data connected to our research." She could have seen the structure before tonight. This was prepared. Peter looked down. Julian's jaw tightened. Everett continued, now speaking to the cameras. "We need an investigation into the leak, the volunteer organization, and anyone who gave her proprietary material." A few guests who had started to believe Nia shifted back in their seats. Suspicion offered relief. If Everett was right, they had not mocked a brilliant woman who saw what they missed. They had only been deceived. Nia looked around the room and understood the new test. She had proven the model was wrong. Now she had to prove she had never accessed the proprietary data used in the challenge. Owen Barrett crossed the ballroom before Renee finished reviewing the version log and stopped beside Nia with his hand extended. "Give me the marker. Remove your badge. You are leaving through the service hall." Nia looked at him. "For what?" Owen's eyes moved toward Everett, then back to her. "For creating an unacceptable disruption." Renee stood. "You may suspend her employment, but she remains a party to a recorded agreement. She cannot be removed until the review is complete." No one had called the altered data a disruption. No one had used the word when Everett changed the test. The label belonged only to Nia, the person who had exposed it. Elaine looked down at the empty glass she had almost placed on Nia's tray. Julian stared at his laptop. Peter kept both hands flat on the table. The room knew something was wrong, yet for several seconds no one moved. Nia unclipped her badge. She untied the apron, folded it into a neat square and placed it on an empty chair. Then she faced the room. "Use public data. Give me something I could not have seen." A woman near the back stood. Professor Mara Feld had spent 30 years teaching applied statistics at Northwestern Lakes Institute. She carried no company badge and had not spoken all evening. "I have a data set," she said. Mara opened a pre-cleaned research exercise built from public Chicago transit records. The city's dashboard ranked several South Side routes among its best performers because they received few complaints through the mobile app. "You have 35 minutes, Mara said. Tell us whether that conclusion holds. Nia did not reach for the marker. How were complaints collected? Mara's eyes sharpened. Good question. The file counted reports submitted through the app. It excluded phone calls, paper forms, and riders who did not use smartphones often enough to report delays. The exercise already contained aligned tables for call center reports, paper complaints, late arrivals, and measured wait times. Nia compared those sources against the app data. She worked without looking at Everett. App complaints alone made several routes appear quiet. The full record showed something else. Riders on those lines waited longer, experienced more missed trips, and used channels the dashboard had ignored. Low app activity did not mean good service. It meant fewer people were being counted. Nia rebuilt the comparison using 5 sources: app reports, call center records, paper forms, late arrival logs, and actual wait times. The rankings reversed. 2 routes praised by the dashboard fell into the worst-performing group. Mara checked each step, then faced the cameras. Her work is reproducible. She did not know the problem. She identified selection bias and corrected it. Julian stood. This time, he did not look at Everett first. He sent the version history to Renee and copied it to Great Lakes Public Trust. Everett instructed Peter to authorize the upload after the challenge started, Julian said. Peter looked at Renee. I approved it. I knew the file was supposed to stay locked. Elaine rose and asked the camera operator to keep recording. I laughed when Miss Carter first spoke. I assumed the room knew more than she did. I was wrong before she wrote a single number. Her admission stripped the room of its last excuse. Everett had led the humiliation, but others had helped by smiling, doubting, and staying quiet. Mara looked at Nia. You know how to ask who disappears when the data is cleaned. Applause did not come at once. Silence came first, a room looking back at itself. Hannah stood. Julian followed. Elaine remained standing. One by one, others rose. Nia did not look at Everett. She placed the marker beside the folded apron. Everett had not lost control because Nia carried a title. He lost it because the evidence no longer depended on his permission. Renee Brooks waited until every camera had stopped moving before she read the agreement aloud. Sloan Meridian had 30 days to transfer $3 million into an independent education fund. The language left no room for delay or a private settlement. Everett stood near the podium, silent, while Renee signed beneath the timestamp and handed copies to Hannah Kim and Great Lakes Public Trust. The trust's representative announced a 90-day hold on the $4 billion allocation. Sloan Meridian would not collapse overnight. The firm simply lost access to the largest deal of its year until an outside audit proved CivicShield could be trusted. That consequence cut deeper than applause. By the next morning, an outside reviewer had compared CivicShield's access logs with Southline Housing Network's records. No account associated with Nia or Southline had entered the proprietary system, and Southline had received only the public technical brief, not the source files used in the challenge. Within 2 days, Sloan Meridian's board removed Everett from all oversight of CivicShield. Peter Caldwell turned over emails showing analysts had warned about missing values, geographic proxies, and unequal neighborhood outcomes months earlier. Those warnings had been trimmed from presentations, softened in summaries, or buried under language about market stability. Everett had not invented every flaw, but he had chosen which concerns investors were allowed to see. Marlowe House tried to keep Nia's suspension in place. Owen's report described her as disruptive, confrontational, and damaging to client relations. It did not mention the altered data, Everett's accusation, or that Nia had remained calm while Owen removed her badge. Elaine, Hannah, and Julian submitted statements. The video filled the gaps Owen had left. It showed him disciplining Nia within seconds, while taking no action when Everett broke the agreement. The venues board called Nia into a private meeting 3 days later. Owen sat at the far end of the table and avoided her eyes. The room suddenly felt smaller without cameras or applause. One board member offered reinstatement, back pay, and a written apology. Nia listened. After the video circulated, 8 current and former black employees had contacted her and given her copies of their own evaluations. She placed those documents on the table. The same phrases appeared again and again. Too direct, not suited for premium clients, difficult to work with, does not understand her place. Several files contain no dates, examples, or customer statements. One worker had received excellent guest service in one section and poor cultural fit in another, both signed by the same manager. Do not review only what happened to me, Nia said. Review the language you used when other employees spoke. Owen shifted in his chair. Those evaluations involved different circumstances. Nia opened the first file, then show the circumstances. No one could. She did not ask the board to destroy Owen's career. She asked them to reopen the records, interview the employees, compare discipline across departments, and remove labels unsupported by facts. The board agreed to an outside review. 3 consequences now stood. The $4 billion deal remained frozen. Everett lost control of CivicShield, and Marlowe House reopened years of personnel decisions. Professor Mara Feld met Nia afterward in the empty ballroom. She offered a 1-year academic bridge program with a review of old credits, full tuition support, and a paid research assistant position. Nia read the letter twice. Sloan Meridian later offered her money to appear in a campaign about responsible innovation. She declined. "Finish the audit before you borrow my face," she wrote. She accepted responsibility for directing the $3 million fund and named it the Open Door Data Fellowship. It would support adults who had left school because of money, caregiving, or work, then found the road back blocked by forms and fees. Nia left Marlowe House carrying no oversized check. Her old spiral notebook rested under one arm. Mara's offer sat inside it. For the first time, the money created by Everett's challenge belonged to a purpose he could not control. 1 year later, Nia Carter arrived at the Urban Data Accountability Lab before sunrise and found 3 messages in her inbox. One came from a city agency asking how to flag missing records before scoring neighborhoods. Another came from a pension board requesting an outside review of its risk model. The third was from Zoe. "The fellowship's first class is tonight. Do not be late to your own program." Nia smiled and set her old spiral notebook beside the keyboard. The cover had softened at the corners. Several pages were held together with clear tape. She still used it because every crowded line reminded her how much work could happen before anyone offered a title. Northwestern Lakes Institute had accepted her previous credits after a formal review. She completed the bridge coursework required to restore her academic standing and joined Mara Feld's research team as a paid assistant while continuing toward her degree. By spring, Nia had become a co-author on a study showing how public agencies turned missing information into false evidence of failure. The paper did not transform the country overnight. It did something smaller and harder to dismiss. 3 pension funds changed their review standards. 2 city departments began testing outcomes across neighborhoods before approving automated decisions. Analysts had to explain why they used zip codes, property values, and other geographic variables. An outside reviewer had to reproduce the results before public money moved. CivicShield returned only to an evaluation stage. The audit required clear labels for missing data, separate testing across population groups, written justification for every geographic input, and independent replication. The final report confirmed Everett Sloan had suppressed internal warnings and approved the model change during Nia's challenge. He left Sloan Meridian before the board completed its restructuring. Nia did not attend the announcement. Watching a powerful man fall interested her less than watching a closed door stay open for someone else. Marlowe House changed in quieter ways. A new manager greeted employees by name during pre-shift meetings. Performance reviews required dates, examples, and a second reviewer. The old labels did not vanish from every file, but employees could challenge them, and managers had to support each judgment with recorded conduct rather than coded impressions. That changed who felt safe speaking. One evening, a guest told a black server she should be grateful to work around important people. The server stopped service, reported the comment, and returned only after another manager addressed the guest. No one called her difficult. No one asked her to disappear for the contract. That night, Nia entered a classroom on the south side carrying a box of markers. 50 adults waited inside for the first meeting of the Open Door Data Fellowship. Some wore work uniforms, some had come from second shifts. A few kept checking the door as if they expected someone to tell them they did not belong. Zoe sat in the last row, smiling without hiding it. On Nia's desk rested the $2 notebook. Nia began with a problem about bus delays and complaint data. She asked what information might be missing. Answers came slowly, then faster. Phone calls, paper forms, riders without smartphones, routes people had stopped using because service had become unreliable. Nia wrote each answer on the board. Near the end of class, a man named Marcus stood to solve the final example. He held the marker near the whiteboard but did not write. His shoulders drew inward. "I have been out of school too long," he said. "I do not think I am smart enough for this." The room went quiet. Nia remembered Everett holding out a marker as though it were a joke and a verdict. She remembered the cameras, the laughter, and the moment the file changed. Then she looked at Marcus, who was not asking for pity. He was asking whether the room had already decided who he was. Nia stepped beside him. She did not take the marker or solve the problem. She closed his fingers around it. "Show your work," she said. "We will listen before we judge." Marcus faced the board. His first line was shaky, the second was clearer. By the third, people leaned forward to follow his reasoning. Nia moved aside and let him finish. Which moment in Nia's story stayed with you the most, and where are you watching from? Share your answer below, then like and subscribe to Black Justice Archive for more stories of truth, dignity, and justice.